Hi, this is Mr. Max with Sankofa Mathematics. So today I am doing ratios and I am going to look at applying the ideas and also the notation of ratios, dividing a quantity by a given ratio, increase and decrease a quantity by a given ratio. In any case, this information here comes from your syllabus in the Namibian ordinary level. So the 4 points that I'm going to look at is I'm going to do a few questions where we simplify ratios, given that some of them might be fractions or decimals, and divide in a given ratio, increase and decrease by a given ratio, and then you're given the ratio plus one value, and then you have to find the other number or numbers. Right, so let us look at quickly at simplifying ratios. So one of the things you should remember whenever you simplify a ratio, that your final answer should not have fractions, should also not have decimals, and there should not be units like centimeters or things like that. Okay, so let's just go directly to it. So here you're supposed to simplify each ratio. So you have got ratio 108 to 48. So what you want to do essentially is you want to find the highest common factor, that is the number that goes in 108 and 48, the highest one there, and then you simplify it. Okay, so that's one way of doing it, and this could be a little cumbersome. It could take time for you to find that 12, but once you have determined that, then you divide each one of those components there by 12, and that is going to give you the ratio in its simplest form. Do you see that I have no units there, no equal sign, it's just given as 9 to 4. However, there is also a clever way that you can do this. Supposedly you get something like this in the examination. Now, you use your calculator, and all you do is, I suggest that you work with a non-programmable calculator. You put 108 over 48, the first over the second, and then you take that improper fraction and you just write it then as in ratio form. Okay, so here we've got three-part ratios, 12 to 42 to 30. Again, so here you obviously now have to look at what is the highest number that goes in 12, 42, and 30. And that number being 6. And when you divide each of those by 6, you get the ratio in its simplest form, 2 to 7 to 5. Okay, so in this particular one, you have to be a little bit careful because the units are not compatible. It means they are not the same. So you have got 45 minutes here that versus 2 hours. So it's always best to change maybe the hours to minutes, always the bigger one to the smaller one, so that you can avoid working with decimals, because supposedly you did 45 minutes to hour, that's 3/4 of an hour or 0.75, and that would mean that you have got a whole different approach that you need to work with. All right, so 2 hours is equal to 120 minutes because 1 hour is 60 minutes. So when you're here at 45 to 120, then you find the highest common factor, or you simply use your calculator. All right, the idea is for you to find that 3 to 8. So when you use your calculator, you put 45 120, you get 3 over 8. So this ratio is essentially a fraction, but you have to write your answer in ratio form. Okay, so to get this 3 to 8, if you were using the other method, you would divide by 15, which is the highest common factor. All right, there's another similar one here. You have got 550 meters to 1.1 kilometers. No, kilometers and meters are not the same thing. So I would suggest that one changes kilometers to meters, and 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. So therefore, 1.1 kilometer is 1,100 meters. Right, so no units here, so now I can start simplifying or grab the calculator, and you realize that the simplest form of the ratio is 1 to 2. Okay, so we have got a second question here. They're saying you're supposed to express each of the following in their simplest form. So here I've got a whole number 3 here, and if you've got this improper fraction or fraction. So what you do is you want to get rid of this 3 essentially. Some people, they go put that 3 over 1, but it's easier to multiply both sides by 3, and that's going to clear the denominator in this side. All right, multiplying by 3 cancels those 3's on that side. So what you do on one side of the ratio, you should also do on another side, leaving you with an answer of 9 to 4. Right, so here we've got a proper fraction and a mixed number. So perhaps it's better to change the mixed number to an improper fraction. Okay, 1 and 1/3 is 4/3. Okay, so when you're here, you are now pretty much close to any type of method that you prefer. Right, so we're going to focus on making the denominators the same here. So we're going to find the lowest common multiple of 6 and 3, which is 3. So essentially, you're going to multiply this fraction here by 2, because 3 times 2 gives you 6, and the other one will just be multiplied by 1. So that leaves you with 5 over 6 to 8 over 6. So now you can definitely now drop the denominators and you just write down the numerators. That is one way of doing it. Right, so this part here, you have got decimals here, but you have to look at the place value of the decimals. This is 75 hundredths, 2 places after the decimal point, and this is 8 tenths, only 1 place. So you need to make them whole numbers by multiplying with the powers of 10. And the one indicator is the 2 decimal places, the one that has more decimal places after it. Okay, so this is going to then mean you multiply each of the ratios by 100. Now it is not always advisable when you deal with fractions to change them to decimals, because you can have fractions that are recurring, and a recurring fraction does not really stop after decimal point. So I would suggest that you use different methods to solve different questions and not just rely on one particular method. Right, so 75 to 80 in its simplest form, dividing by 5 gives you 15 to 16. Ultimately, you can also put 75 over 80 with this part here and on your calculator. Another very interesting fact and very useful, when you get to the exam, you can put 0.75 over zero point 0.8 on your calculator. All right, this is obviously going to mean you're a little bit lazy. But once you do it, you are going to essentially end up with the same thing, which is 15 over 16, which you then go ahead and write it as a ratio. Right, the second part of our work deals with division by a given ratio. So we are given a ratio, for example, we're given the ratio 5 is to 7, and you're supposed to divide this 48, could be anything, could be money, all right? But we're supposed to divide it by this ratio. So a very simple step that you need to do is you need to add the parts of the ratio 5 plus 7, giving you 12. All right, and from here on, then you take the 5 over the 12, multiply by the 48, and you take the 7 over the 12, multiply by the 48. Whatever method you prefer, the answer should be 20 parts to 28. All right, so the second question I have here, it has to deal with the angles of a triangle. Now, before you go on, there's something missing here, and that comes from your knowledge that you should know that the interior angles of any triangle, they all add up to 180. So our 180 is going to be what we are going to multiply with our ratio here. So we're going to add the parts again. If you add 3 plus 5 plus 7 gives you 15. And then you can do each one. 3 over 15 times 180 degrees. 5 over 15 times 180 degrees. And 7 over 15 times 180 degrees. Ultimately, you should get now the missing angles that they are looking for. 36 degrees, 60 degrees, and 84 degrees. And when you add them all up, you realize you get 180 degrees. Right, the third thing that we are looking at always has to do with increasing and decreasing by a given ratio. So when you are dealing with this, and it's a very simple thing that one needs to look at. If you multiply any number, all right, suppose I multiply the number 16 by 2 over 3. And the 2 over 3 is what is catching my eye here. All right, because 2 over 3, as you can see from this 2 over 3, it's a proper fraction. And because it's a proper fraction, the answer will be significantly less than the number itself. All right, so that is what you need to realize when you're dealing with a proper fraction. Whenever you multiply anything by a proper fraction, you're going to get an answer that is less than that. Okay, and this particular answer, if you have to work it out, you're going to get 40 as an answer. So this would be a place where you decrease something. All right, so what about when you increase? So suppose I take the same 60 and I was to increase it, right? And that fraction has to be turned around then. So you will be saying then 60 times, then times 3 over 2. And when you get 60 times 3 over 2, obviously that is going to give you a smaller number than that. Okay, half of 60 is 30, and 30 times 2. All right, so you have got um, half of 60 is 30. All right, and 30 times 3 gives you 90, which is considerably higher. So this 3 over 2 or 2 over 3 could have been a ratio of 2 is to 3 or 3 is to 2, depending on what the question is asking of us. So this is actually something you have to be on the lookout for whenever you're dealing with questions of this nature. Right, so we have got 30 here that is supposed to be, in this particular case, increased by that ratio. So you're not adding, you're not dividing anything by anything. So all you need to do is you take the ratio, and because you are increasing it, then you write the ratios in improper fraction, and then you get 45 as the answer. The B part has to do with decreasing 30. All right, so the ratio has been swapped around. So decreasing means you must multiply then by a proper fraction. And you get an answer that is less than 30. In this particular case, the correct answer is 20. Okay, so let's bring in another question here. It says a photocopier reduces in the ratio 3 to 5. The height of a tree is 15 centimeters on the original. All right, how tall is it on the reduced copy? So you take reduced means you are supposed to decrease by the given ratio. So 3 over 5 proper fraction times 15, that gives you 9 centimeters. Right, part 3 here, Leo plans to paint a picture. He considers making it 48 centimeters long and 36 centimeters wide. So the length is 48 and the width is 36. But then he decides that to increase the length of 48 centimeters in that ratio. So you're going to take 48, multiply that by 5 over 4. And then he's going to decrease the width of 36 by that ratio 3 to 4. So you're going to take 36 and you're going to multiply it by a proper fraction 3 over 4. Okay, so you should then also arrive at the same answer where the length is 60 centimeters. You can see it's considerably longer because you multiplied by an improper fraction, and the width will be less than 36 because you multiply it by a proper fraction. Right, the last thing that one has to look at, this is quick revision, okay, given the ratio and one value. So we have got a ratio 2 is to 3. This is N and John. So N gets 2 parts out of the 3, out of the 5, and John gets 3 parts out of the 5. I'm adding the 2 plus 3 there. But now, we are not into sharing. The 15 belongs to John. So I'm going to put the 15 under there. So we are looking for what was the other number. So what did N receive? All right, sometimes they ask you the total, then you take N's value, add with the 15 in this case, and then you know how much it is, that how many sweets there were altogether in the beginning. All right, so we get a 5 that I'm using here to multiply both of the ratios by 5 by taking 15 divided. So it's always division or multiplication, and it's not subtraction or addition. And once you multiply 2 times 5, you get 10. So John then, or N then rather, gets 10 sweets. Ultimately, there are many other ways. Some people are used to writing this as equivalent fractions, and then they bring in some sort of cross multiplication. Okay, because it's direct proportion. 3x equals to 30, then half, and 30 divided by 3 gives you 10. And these answers obviously correspond with each other. Then there's a second question here. It says N, Bella, and Carla, A, B, C, as you could have thought of it. They enter in a competition and they win a prize. They divide then the prize in the ratio 3 to 2 to 1. So could be that the competition was of such a nature that Hannah gets the majority of whatever the share is, the prize that they get. Okay, so they get Bella's share. We know Bella is the one in the middle who have 2 parts out of the 6. She gets 30 Namibian dollars. So let's just bring them in. So the ratio is 3 is to 2 is to 1. And now I put the 30 under for Bella because that's the information we have. So we are then interested in this 2 and this 30 here. So we need to know by what did Bella's increase to get to 30? And that is essentially 2 times 15. The 15 you get from saying 30 divided by 2. So you must then multiply each part by 15. When you do 3 times 15, you get 45, which is what Anna is getting. And then Carla gets 15 Namibian dollars respectively. Okay, so you can go back and you can pause the video and make sure that you quickly do revision and do further exercises on this particular chapter.